we are looking at basically the same basic ideals, all right? So that, I think, should be the priority. So to propel this nation further towards economic progress, the agenda will obviously be large, but the necessary condition must be, to me at least, and to many in this room, governmental and political stability. I think if at all there is any correlation, this is the correlation. Yeah? That's why I say Malaysia is interesting. Well, we won't get the governmental and political stability if politicians continue to be preoccupied with rocking the stability of this nation as part of a continuing attempt to assume power by every political means at their disposal. That will be a sad day for this nation. So given the current scenario, to my mind, some may not agree, I think the reforms of certain so-called repressive laws should best be studied further. Maybe it is not the correct time yet, yeah? Because of the political scenario, the interesting political scenario in Malaysia. I'm not saying that these reforms are not important. Of course they are. But sometimes one needs to tread carefully in the context of present-day challenges. What are these areas? One of the favorite targets is the law on sedition. Yeah? People argue New Zealand doesn't have a law on sedition, they've abolished it, UK doesn't have a law on sedition, so we must do away with our law on sedition. I used to be one of those who felt the Sedition Act should be repealed and perhaps replaced by a national harmony legislation. Yeah? National harmony and sedition poles apart. But recent developments have convinced me otherwise, at least for the time being. Yeah? Now is not the right time. There is still a need for us to have the law on sedition. Because attempts to cause disaffection against a government lawfully established, to cause affection, to challenge the position of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and the rulers, and all attempts to cause disharmony among the races in Malaysia, I believe should be rigorously resisted and punished accordingly. No two ways about it. You want stability, you cannot give the full extent of the freedoms. You cannot simply repeal a law that might be a savior in certain situations. So I think we have to look at it carefully. The other law, which has surfaced every now and then, is Sosma, Security Offences Special Measures Act. Some people say that too should be repealed. I mean, we're a developing nation, we want to be progressive. That has to go too. I still believe, contrary to my earlier position, we should still maintain it, at least for the time being. But safeguards must be put in place to ensure basic human rights and the dignity of those arrested and or charged are respected. That is the important thing. No matter how the law is structured, make sure that human dignity is respected and the basic human rights are respected too. For instance, so I think we should be looking at it and have the law changed accordingly to make sure that when people are detained or arrested, at least the families should know where they are, and they should not be placed in all kinds of places which do not accord the dignity of the human being in those situations. But that is one thing. But to say that it should be abolished altogether, I personally don't believe that the time is right. The other often or oft-criticized law is, of course, the notorious Section 233 of the Communications and Multimedia Act 1998. That's another area I think we should be looking at when we're doing reforms. That criminalizes the use of network facilities or network services by a person to transmit any communication that is deemed offensive and could cause annoyance to another. I think it can be tweaked a bit, so that but it remains necessary to have laws of this nature, given the abundance of fake news, half-truth, and misrepresentations over the social media currently. Things have changed. You know, every day you click on your TikTok account and you will see a torrent of fake news, a torrent of misrepresentations, and many other things which shouldn't be mentioned. So I think we need such laws. Unfortunately, we had one, but the Pakatan Harapan government repealed it after some bit of difficulty. I think now is the time maybe to think along the lines of having some kind of anti-fake news legislation. It is necessary because conditions then and conditions now have changed dramatically. Technology has its upside, but in the political sphere, it has a tremendous downside, particularly in nations such as ours, such as Malaysia, where views can be grounded on race, religion, regionalism, and so on and so forth. We can't allow a free-for-all situation, so these laws are still needed. So, what is my point? My point is, I believe sometimes the wholesale emphasis on reform of so-called repressive laws as a priority can be misplaced. We should be seriously considering the reform of outdated laws, actually, instead of repressive laws, in the areas of business and commerce, and replace them with more modern and progressive acts. That is better than focusing our attention on this other legislation that can come later. But for now, let's polish up our act in the commercial and business areas. You know, I'm not saying there shouldn't be any reform at all on these repressive laws. I'm saying time, circumstance. But even so, some laws have to be tweaked. I did mention, having respect to human rights, basic human rights, and dignity of the individual for those who are detained incommunicado and things like that. We still need to do it. And sometimes you don't need legislative change. The judiciary might come into the fore and decide what is just. So that's why judiciary is so important. So the short answer is, yes, we have to change eventually, but don't repeal the entire act now without replacing it with something else. Because we need to have political stability. And this ties in with what the Minister was saying just now. To maintain that two-thirds majority, it's not easy. You need political stability. We cannot afford to have people running amok, saying all kinds of things, even as we speak. There are so many, very alarming, very alarming. So there must be laws to ban all this. So when the country becomes stable, then it will be a good time for us to commit ourselves to all this in the full gamut of international freedoms. But I did say, that we are actually not doing too badly, on the freedoms front. And our courts have been very astute in this. There have been so many cases on the point. I myself decided on the freedom of assembly case. Remember, Nick Nazmi. So we declared the act unconstitutional. Of course, some people disagree in government on what we did, but it has stood the test of time. So things like that. So you rely on not only legislative changes, but also think of what the judiciary can do. But we have to give the judiciary our support. Even the judiciary is being criticized now. So many things are happening, below the radar. So it's quite alarming. That's why I say, keep what we have now, amend whatever little we can, but don't throw everything out together with the kitchen sink, and then we regret later on. We must learn a valuable lesson from the episode with the international conventions. It was good, but timing was not right, so people made full use of it. Anyway,